You're listening to the Yin and Yang Show, a marketing and sales conversation with Lindsay Kelly and Brian Signorelli. Strategic and tactical advice about inbound sales and marketing.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Yin and Yang Show. Thanks for joining us again. We so appreciate your ear. This week, Brian Signorelli and I are joined by an amazing guest. And I'm going to let Mr. Signorelli do the honors because this is quite an exciting interview for both of us to be having. We've had some amazing guests. This is probably one of my favorites that I was so excited about. So without further ado, Mr. Signorelli, please introduce our guest.
Yeah, so I'm really excited today. I'm definitely like a kid in a candy shop because we have Scott Brinker on with us, who is Chief MarTech. For those of you who know Chief MarTech, and for those of you who don't, you soon will, and you should. And he, even more exciting from my perspective, because I am a team member at HubSpot. He recently joined HubSpot not long ago as a VP of Platform and the platform ecosystem at HubSpot, leading tons of different initiatives, but mainly in building our Connect Partner program, which has over 120 certified companies with app integrations into HubSpot's platform itself. So I don't want to steal your thunder, Scott. I'd love if you just introduce yourself, and we're so thankful to have you on with us today.
Wow, well, thank you. Yeah, wow, beautiful introduction. Awesome. Scott Brinker, been wearing a couple different hats in the MarTech industry for a number of years. I've been a participant as a software developer. Before joining HubSpot, was CTO at a company called Ion Interactive that made an interactive content platform, let people build everything from like simple quizzes up to, sophisticated solution finders and assessment tools. Back in September of last year, joined HubSpot to help in this role of platform ecosystem. As I've said, no SaaS is an island at this point. HubSpot's got an amazing product, an amazing customer base, but really there's so much opportunity to connect the HubSpot world with all of these other fascinating software ecosystems across the cloud. So very excited to be working on that. But yeah, the other hat I've been wearing is, aside from doing this professionally, everybody needs a hobby. And so, man, I just don't have a lot of variance in my hobbies. I was like, well, how about MarTech? So I started a blog about 10 years ago, chiefmartech.com, really looking at this interplay between the worlds of marketing and technology, partly from the tech side, but frankly, I've been as fascinated by the way this is changing the way marketing teams are organized, the sort of talent that works in marketing, these professional roles of hybrid marketing technologists. And what started as a very really topic 10 years ago has kind of mushroomed into a slightly larger niche topic, really enjoying it.
So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that kind of origin story. As I mentioned, when we started our call today, I as a sales rep from 2012 and through as a sales manager through basically 2016, so about 4 years stretch there, I referenced your marketing technology landscape constantly. My team members did. I mean, probably the whole force of the couple hundred or so sales reps at HubSpot, and much beyond that too. We often reference that in a variety of different contexts. But when you started that, Scott, I think you're right that it was kind of a niche thing back then. So can you tell us a little bit, I guess, first about where did this kind of idea of Chief MarTech come from? And what kind of led up to you creating that first landscape that had maybe 100 or so different marketing technologies compared to I'll let you get into it, but so many more than 100 or so today, back I think in around 2007 or 2008. Is that right?
Yeah. So I guess two parts of that. So the marketing technologist side. So back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was running the technology team at a web development company. And so we were building out websites for mostly B2B companies, folks like Siemens. We built all of Citrix's web infrastructure. And it was a great time. I really enjoyed what we were doing, particularly post-bubble, where people were actually looking for realistic approaches to what you could do with the web. And I've always been a fan of realism over the hype. But so what would happen is our web development company would get hired by the marketing department because they were the ones who wanted the actual outcomes in engaging with the world. But then as the head of the tech team on our group, I would get nominated to go talk to the client's IT department because the marketing and IT teams could not talk. Which was fascinating. And it wasn't even about, like hostility. It was just they were living in two different universes, just two different languages, two different set of incentives, the way they were thinking about everything. And so as I was shuttling back and forth between these two teams, trying to do MarTech diplomacy, if you will, I was just struck by, on one hand, the gulf, the distance in the thinking between those two teams. But also, if you looked at the objectives of what the company was trying to accomplish, it was so clear these two teams were going to be married at the hip. They had to be. And so that was really the genesis of the Chief MarTech blog, was looking at how marketing and IT teams were slowly starting to figure out how to collaborate effectively together. And in particular, got really fascinated by these hybrid professionals, marketing technologists. I mean, there's a number of names you could use for it, but this idea of people who have strength both in the technology and understanding these systems and how to architect them and operate them, but people who also really deeply love the mission of marketing and trying to think, how do we apply this technology for some impact and effect on prospects and customers.
Right.
So that was the start to the blog. Yep.
So the first landscape that you built, was that actually a project you did for clients, or was that something you said, "Oh no, it's I've been doing this work for a while now. I kind of understand it. As I've done this research, there's 100 or so technologies out there. I should kind of organize them, and I think other people might find this valuable." Like,
not even.
He was just looking for a hobby.
Can't even get that much credit. It was completely by accident. So here I am. If I had one message I was trying to get across to the world, I was trying to convince marketing executives that they should hire someone with technical expertise and insight as a part of the marketing team. And so I was going to give a presentation at a conference of marketing executives back in 2010. And I had the idea of saying, all right, well, let me show these folks why they need someone who understands this, because these are all the different technologies that now marketing is really becoming dependent on to execute its mission. Right. And so that's where that first graph came from. It was, entirely impromptu of look at how dependent marketing is on technology. And it had the effect I was hoping it would. I mean, people were like, oh, wow, maybe we should. The irony of it, of course, was at the time, myself and everyone else, we were just like, oh my goodness, like 150 marketing technology vendors. How will we ever keep track of them all?
So that's a perfect segue into my next question, which is, okay, throughout the years, you continued to build this. And I don't think you missed a year. From
1 year.
Okay, 1 year you missed.
2013.
2013, okay. But from 2007 to 2017, as far as I know, with the exception of 2013, I've seen a new one every year. So as you reflect over that decade, is there anything that has surprised you? I mean, you just said, for example, that, the first time you said, oh my gosh, 150 technologies, how will we ever manage? What's kind of been interesting or surprising to you as you've continued this work over the past 10 years?
Yeah, I think two things that are surprising. Certainly one, the growth. I mean, it is as surprising to me as I think it is for anyone else, because it's not just growth, it's been friggin' exponential growth. And particularly, over the past 3 or 4 years, when it's gotten up here now to like over 5,000 solutions that I've charted, It's just crazy. So that's been surprising, of course. But the other thing that was actually surprising to me was how much pushback there was from mostly industry analysts in this space of, it's kind of been a narrative now going on for the past 5 years is I'll publish one of these and the immediate pushback is, oh no, that's just an anomaly and it's going to all consolidate. And the thing that always fascinated me about that is I actually think that's a totally valid hypothesis. But through this process, I've just kind of approached it as a very empirical exercise of saying, okay, well, it could consolidate, it could do other interesting things. Let's see what happens and try and understand it as it goes. And it just surprises me, like how strong some of these predispositions are in the industry to just say, oh yeah, we've seen this before, we're going to predict the outcome. I'm like,
one angle you could, or a hypothesis I guess you could throw out there is, well, yeah, Scott, it is growing, but it's consolidating at the same time. So it's just that the growth is outpacing the consolidation. You know this better than anyone else. So I'll just ask you, is that even happening?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, so, one of the big flaws with that landscape that I produce is it gives no sense of relative scale of the different vendors. So I don't know, companies like, Salesforce, their logo is the same size as, this small little startup with 10 people. If you were to draw this as a distribution based on, just say revenue, scale, it would be a perfect long tail distribution. You'd have a few like multi-billion-dollar companies, a slightly larger set of, companies with hundreds of millions in revenue. And then essentially what is effectively an infinite long tail of companies going down to, hey, well, someday we might get revenue. So yeah, there's definitely consolidation at that level. But it's interesting. This is actually one of the reasons I joined HubSpot in this role for platform ecosystem, is I don't believe consolidation has to be the enemy of a long tail of innovation. In fact, if you look at other platforms and other markets, probably the most obvious one is, like the smartphone worlds of Android and Apple, right? You've got these incredibly consolidated platforms and then this infinite long tail of innovative applications that plug on top of those platforms. And I really do, if I was going to pick a hypothesis of how I think this marketing sales landscape will evolve, I think it's going in that direction, but there are other hypotheses too.
Well, I want to get to that. I want to come back to the kind of what does the future hold. But one thing I feel like for anyone listening, we might be, and it's my fault for doing this, but I think maybe we're going far ahead to the point where they're thinking, what is this? Like, I've never heard of Chief MarTech before. Maybe, hopefully not. So two things. The first is, if people want to learn more about what it is that we're talking about and this marketing technology landscape, what's the best place or best resource that you would, want to point them to?
Okay, that one's easy. So if you go to Chief MarTech without the H at the end, chiefmartechtec.com. That's my blog. You can get a link right there for this crazy MarTech landscape infographic. If you haven't seen that before and this is your first time seeing that, I apologize. It often there'll all be like a doctor's warning that don't go into convulsions or something. It's okay. It'll be all okay. Trust me.
I used to use an explosion, the slide right before this. I'm like, I'm going to blow your mind. I'm going to get ready. Because it's overwhelming if it's something that you're not thinking about the way that people like us do all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't tell you how many stories I've had of, like CMOs who have been shown this, and their reaction is, various reactions, but one of them is like, oh, no, this is crazy. We only use one or two pieces of marketing software. And then actually, someone sits down with them and actually says, well, let's actually inventory what we're doing. And, next thing they know, they've got 5 dozen different applications off of that landscape that actually, I guess we are using this and this other thing, which to me is actually part of why this isn't as crazy as it might seem at first is, the world is it's a digital world. Software is everywhere. The fact that we would have dozens and dozens of different software applications, most of which don't even rise to the level of thinking of them as some big enterprise investment. It's just a handy tool that we happen to use for this purpose here. I actually think that's a good thing.
I mean, even look at you drew this analogy earlier, but I mean, even look at your phone. My phone, I didn't do a count, while you were talking, but if I did, I would guess that there's at least 30 or 40 apps on that phone alone. So the phone's the backbone, it's the platform, but all the customization and all the little apps and tools and kind of value add things I need, those are all right there. And frankly, I don't think it's any different. Speaking both from experience selling into companies that are using sales and marketing technology stacks, as well as working at HubSpot, obviously. Technology is everywhere. And as I think Benioff said or wrote in that essay not too many years ago, that software is indeed eating the world. So I guess one other thing that I want to talk about a little bit is, in addition to learning about this marketing technology landscape and going to chiefmartech.com, can you tell our listeners a little bit, just a little 101, what the term MarTech and the burgeoning, I think, term that I've paid a lot of attention to over the past two, maybe 3 years now, has been sales tech as well. Can you just kind of give some 101 introductions to both those terms and why those categories matter?
Sure. So MarTech, short for marketing technology, pretty much as it sounds, it's technology used in the service of marketing, or sales tech, technology used in the service of sales. So, in marketing, there's been a couple very common applications we've thought of for this, things like marketing automation platforms, perhaps social media marketing systems. Very often our content management systems we think of in the same, content marketing tools. When you start looking at things like CRMs, typically used both by marketing and sales, you cross over into sales tech, you get, all sorts of fascinating tools for everything from, like enablement to, being able to automate Salesforce automation. The infinite long tail of, ever more specific applications across, marketing and sales teams. And why does it matter? I think this is all happening in the context of, we said it earlier, like the world's gone digital. And now the relationships that companies have with their prospects and customers, so much of that is either happening through or augmented by all these digital touch points, whether it's, something on the web or in social or a messaging platform, or, even if we're on the phone with them in sales, right? We're being supported by all this information, coming at us, through the CRM, and then we're using what happens there next to, follow up with the right next step. Technology is very much empowering marketing and sales in a way that it's an order of magnitude more than the capabilities we had 10 years ago.
So one of the things you pointed out, you started to talk about this a little bit as you went through kind of the marketing technology categories. Curious to know, again, as you've kept track of this and studied this and kind of been so vocal about it over the years, have you noticed maybe in the last, 1 or 2 years, have you noticed any pockets inside that landscape, within the marketing technology or really anywhere, if you want to expand beyond marketing, feel free to do so. But are there any pockets that you've seen that are really exploding or really kind of heating up, things that maybe you didn't see in the 2007 to 2012 timeframe that you're seeing kind of accelerating now or kind of coming out of nowhere in the 2016 to 18 timeframe?
Yeah, it's fascinating to me. So one of the, I guess, sort of benefits, I should put this in quotes, of, working on that crazy landscape every year is, I actually have gone through and I've looked at every single one of those companies. And so every year when I go category by category, that's one of the things I'm looking for is, what's a hot category? Where is this pocket of innovation really exploding? And the thing that has just amazed me is it's been pretty consistent that it's almost hard to find a category where there isn't some sort of disruptive innovation happening. I mean, like, let me pick one like, content management systems, right? Which you could argue is, between that and email, like the oldest category in marketing technology. And you'd think, okay, we've plumbed content management systems here. Like, what more is there left to be done here? And oh my God, there's this incredible innovation happening with this. Like one of the movements over these past couple of years is something called headless CMS. This idea of increasingly these content management systems aren't just feeding these very fixed web interfaces, but they're also surfacing up this content and personalization data to feed it into other channels, like messaging, email, and so, like, even in one of these categories that you would think would be, old and stable and done, people are really pushing stuff forward in a disruptive way. I mean, I guess if you're going to say anything from like a category just exploding in size, it's clearly sales tech. It's not even, it doesn't even do it justice to, just give it a single label of sales tech, because, you could do a whole landscape just on that field, with dozens and dozens of specialized categories. And I think that's fascinating because, sales would have been one of those professions, if I can, overgeneralize with some terrible stereotypes, right?
I've asked and celebrated the sales profession, my own profession, various times on this show. So there's nothing you can say that won't offend me.
Marketing went through this too. Basically, for a long time, marketing was not considered a particularly technically savvy department.
Just made it pretty.
Yeah, right. The arts and crafts department, right?
Branding, finger painting.
So, but now, the absolute opposite, right? Marketing is just, neck deep in technology and getting increasingly very sophisticated about how it applies it. It's been the same thing with sales. Sales for a long time really resisted. It was a human relationship profession. The tech CRM was very often a source of annoyance to salespeople, more than, a benefit. And so, you see now in this explosion over these past couple of years, it's exciting to see all the technology. But what is even more fascinating is this transformation that's actually happening in sales teams, where all of a sudden technology, which used to be arm's length and maybe not really my friend, has become, wow, this is awesome. This is what I'm depending on. I'm leveraging this to really crush it. That is a transformation to me that is actually far more exciting than the actual innovations with the tech tools themselves.
Right. That's actually something interesting. I was I'm in the process of writing a blog article. I haven't written for a while.
No, because you just wrote a book. You were a little busy.
I took some time. It was funny. I was talking to my girlfriend last night. It was like 11 o'clock at night, and I just said, like, I'm mad. She said, well, what are you mad about? I was like, I have writer's block. She's like, what do you mean you have writer's block? You wrote a book. I'm like, but I've had writer's block for like 3 months now, and I can't stand it anymore. Like, I can't get fresh ideas out. And she's like, you realize that most people have writer's block for like a long time, like a lot longer than a couple of months, right? And I'm like, yes, but
everything's accelerated, right?
Everything's going fast. Everything's about speed and personalization these days. Like, I have to go fast. Like, if I'm not fast.
So what kind of technology exists to get through the writer's block? Come on, Scott,
Exactly.
think of something.
Well, actually, there's a bunch of AI technology
Right,
that will do the writing for you. But
Yes.
That's more in the sports world, though.
Funny you should mention that.
Yeah, but I'm writing this article that's basically I don't know if this will be the final headline or not, but it's something to the effect of, like, if I hear a salesperson say people buy from people one more time, I'm going to lose it. And it's just shocking to me how many people out there still absolutely are resisting technology. I think that the resistance is lowering slowly over time. But it also reminded me of this. I don't know if you've ever come across a guy named Derek Wazinski. He's on the West Coast. He was at a company called Zenbit. Might have been on the sales tech landscape at some point. But anyway, he put together this kind of funny little meme, and it was a picture. And I guess we'll put this in the post when this gets turned into content. This picture of an angry mob of people holding signs that says, headline, "Resist AI. I love getting cold calls and talking to salespeople. Please don't make it easy for me to purchase your widgets by myself."
That's great.
Like, of course, because if you think as a salesperson, do you think your buyers are out there like protesting, saying, "No, like save salespeople, save salespeople. I hate it when things are easy to do or far less resistant," or God, like imagine I don't actually have to talk to a salesperson and I could actually just do this on my own. Anyway, I think it is.
And that's a good point. And I'm going to jump in just for a second.
Yeah,
because
go ahead.
one of the things that I think sales reps sometimes do have a legitimate gripe about is if there is this gap between, the buyer's journey where they start their research process and then 70% of the way later, they finally get to talk to a salesperson, as marketing, technology, and sales as a unit, like we have to focus on creating a digital soul, because that human to human contact is still what's being craved, but it's just not in person anymore. So that's a piece that I think, sales and marketing need to work on to turn into a digital soul that's more technologically out there. It's more tech, but it's hard to do that. And if a sales team doesn't have a marketing team capable of that, then they have every reason to gripe, because it's a, what would you like to buy today from the AI? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's personality is everything. I mean, so one of my, again, another sort of side benefit of working on that crazy MarTech landscape is I've looked at the websites of 5,000 different marketing technology companies. And the thing that amazes me is how many of them are completely incoherent. Like I read it, I'm like, I'm a MarTech person. I have no idea what you do. I'm trying to understand this, and it just sounds like gobbledygook. And it's a lot of them. And I mean, for crying out loud, right? If you're in marketing and sales, as a solution provider, right, you should be the shining beacon of an example of, yes, and here's how effective we are at communicating our story and our benefits and engaging with customers through our own digital channels. So,
right.
I mean, the flip side is, whenever I find the ones that are really good at it, it's like, wow, that really resonates. I mean, you can do this. It's not impossible. It's just, it is a different set of skills. You have to work on it. And
emotionally, look how you just lit up. Like, you're like, oh, I can make an emotional connection with that. And that's, I mean, there's that person to person piece, it's human to human. It's just, we just have a technology in between now. We got to figure that out.
Yeah. Augmented human.
Augmented humans. There you go. New phase. You heard it here first.
Hashtag.
Right.
That's awesome. Right. So then can I kind of piggyback on that question that Sig just asked and kind of jump to, in your opinion, Scott, what does the next 5 years of all of this technology look like? That's a loaded question, and you may want to go year by year. It's up to you. Year one.
Yes, week by week.
Your question. Yeah.
It feels week by week sometimes.
Yeah. So there's a book called Crowd Machine Platform. I think Eric Brynjolfsson, Andrew McAfee. They also wrote The Second Machine Age. Definitely great books to read, just sort of about this dynamics of how rapidly technology is accelerating and what that's going to mean for business, but also society at large. And one of the points they make in these books is we know that technology advances exponentially, like Moore's law, which says roughly every couple years, computing power doubles. We see that same sort of dynamics with, things like storage and, costs of capabilities in the cloud and so on. So what's happening is all these things are changing exponentially. And the thing that makes it really challenging for everyone in business is if you keep doubling something, like if we just start with 1 and we go to 2 and 4 and 8 and 16, when you're in those sort of low numbers, I mean, it's moving fast, but your head can kind of get around, you can wrap your head around that and say, okay, well, if it's 60 now, it will be 32 next year and 64 the year after that. Still my brain can process that, but when you get up to the point where you're at you've doubled all the way to 4 billion, and now the next iteration is going to double to 8 billion, it's like, you can't even conceive of what this means. And so that's one of the reasons I'm usually resistant to prognosticate what the next 5 years will look like, at least technologically, just because things are now in that stage where the doublings that are happening are so transformative. I mean, thinking of stuff like, just Alexa, right? I mean, all these voice assistants that are, now in our lives, science fiction, we got self-driving cars. I mean, it's getting into the weird zone, so I won't predict the technology. What I will predict though is, and this is the takeaway from realizing that we're operating in this world of exponential change, is businesses that used to be primarily structured around the execution of a very well-defined long-term strategy, that is generally not the way you win. That the way you win now is to develop an organization that has above everything else, the ability to adapt, that it can sort of sense change that's happening in its market with its customers, with its competitors, and be able to, faster than others in the industry, be able to, okay, how do we internalize what that means, and how do we have the structure and the systems and really the culture designed to take advantage of that change, to make change our friend instead of our enemy.
Oh, making my head spin.
Sorry.
I couldn't agree more.
But you're right. We don't know what the next thing is. And, I now that I'm in the IoT space, I listen to this podcast called, Internet of Things. And it's a great podcast, but it talks all about, they call her Madam A, and she's sitting next to me, so I can't say her name out loud. But they talk about just, all of these different systems and how all these things tie together. And I think about how their focus is so much on how it connects to your life and how it connects to this and that and voice search. And, and it expands into, think about what we're going to be able to do in 5 years. I'm working from home today just because I'm not feeling great, but I could probably turn to some device in my house in the next probably 2 years and tell it, start an email using this email account and email this person, and then go into my files and attach this file. And just thinking about all of the different things that we're going to be able to do just from that perspective. Imagine if I could go, Alexa, set up a workflow. I need a nurturing campaign for this particular audience. They need to hit this particular segment of the market. It's just mind blowing.
Yeah, actually, I guarantee you what you just described there will absolutely be doable here within the next 12 to 24 months. Because we already, it's actually all the pieces already exist to do that. So yeah, it's amazing. Only thing you can need to layer on that is you wouldn't just be doing this at your home. You'd be, transporting anywhere in the world you wanted on demand without even thinking about it, and still able to do all of that without any interruption. I mean, it's a fun time to be alive.
It's interesting to see that
so
it was wasn't it somewhat recently? I mean, and I think we see this trend. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm only the only one seeing this trend, but I think other people see it too. Is that somebody said to me, if you want to know where B2B is going, all you got to do is look at B2C, because B2C companies tend to solve problems with technology because, frankly, the average sales price of a consumer product is so low that you can't grow a business with hiring tons and tons and tons of salespeople. In B2B, you can more often than not, although we're seeing that change. And if you look at companies like Amazon, for example, I think very recently Amazon started talking about the business application of Alexa, not just the consumer application. And I think if we see, I'm very, very interested, especially the example that you pointed out, Lindsay, kind of a combination of, I don't know if it's like artificial intelligence and voice plus marketing automation or some smash up of those three types of things. That's an intersection that I'm very, very interested. There are others, but that's an interesting one to me.
I'll cut 2 days off my nurturing process.
Mm-hmm.
Put it out myself. Take this persona and market it to this.
Yep.
Crazy.
Then it will recommend, actually. It will say, hey,
Oh
Lindsay,
yeah, it'll tell me
what I
this
would
is better.
recommend flows I should set up for you. Is this okay by you?
Yeah. And it's funny you bring that point up because she started asking me if the answers that she's giving me are actually answering my questions appropriately. So she's getting smarter. And that's really, I've only heard that in the past couple of weeks. Did I answer your question appropriately? And I'm like, okay, now I'm getting creeped out. Like I already moved her out of my bedroom,
Mm-hmm.
put her in a different room. I'm like, okay, no, we're moving that. No. But I would. You said something before, Sig, that you had found this article, and you said something about, is software eating the world? Well, Scott, is software eating the world?
I think it ate the world.
I think it ate the world.
It's already swallowed it. We're 6 years
It's
past
kind of
it.
hard
Back
to
up
find
and-
something that isn't either, if it's not being directly run by software, it's being supported, or enabled by software. That, it's what's fascinating though is, right, that's not a once and done sort of transformation. Software just continues to iterate. Again, going back to that stuff with Moore's law. I mean, all this fun stuff we're seeing with machine learning and artificial intelligence. Frankly, a lot of those algorithms, have been around for decades. It's just really that only now the computing power and the data scale and speed that we have actually makes them practical. But yeah, you give that another year or two, and I'm quite sure our minds will be blown by what will be possible.
Well, and transitioning into how some of these people are using it, I'm sure that there are companies that come to mind that are doing some of the things that we've talked about today, doing this really well with managing their sales and marketing tech stack. What are some of those, and what are the things that they're doing that are working so well?
So one of my, this will be a plug for a contest I run every year around Chief Martech and the Martech
Please
conference.
plug away.
Okay. Hey, well, a little sales. It's something called the Stackies. And this is an awards program where we invite marketing operations, marketing technology people to send in a single PowerPoint slide that illustrates how they think of their marketing technology stack. And so part of this is, them identifying the different tools that they use, which is helpful to see, who's using what tools in what context. But the thing that makes it so exciting to me is the way people, compete in this contest is really helping to visualize, okay, what does this actually mean? Like, how are we thinking about these tools fitting together? Like, how does it map to the customer journey? How does it map to perhaps a set of, internal structures we use? How are we dealing with, stable systems of record, and also finding ways to experiment with new and emerging technologies? And I'm so grateful everyone who participates in this, they agree to make their stacks publicly shared. So you can now Google Martech Stackies, and there's on SlideShare something like, 100 or 20 of these stacks, including ones from companies like Microsoft and Cisco. And so it's really fascinating to me. Like when I look at those, not all of them, but a lot of them, I think what they're getting right is they're just being very thoughtful about treating marketing technology as a capability in the service of a larger strategy or vision of how they're running their marketing and sales organization. And I think that's the first place to start, is you can't treat these as just sort of disconnected tools or something the IT person messes with, right? You really have to think carefully about, all right, what are the capabilities I'm trying to enable for my teams, for my organization, and then really go through that process of mapping the tools to the way that becomes realized through, process and people and strategy.
Oh no, that's fascinating. That's like one of the best sound bites I think I've got. That's my lesson learned for the day right there. I'm going to write that one down and make sure it goes out on LinkedIn immediately. But no, I'm really excited to look at that now, because those are some of the thought leaders too in this space. How are they using it? And knowing that there's something out there. That's the first thing I thought of when you said, thankfully, they've allowed us to share this so other people can learn. I love that. That's fantastic. So,
yeah, and one of the themes that you'll see in a number of them is this idea of design for change, that they definitely think about how they build their marketing stack so that there are these foundational systems that provide stability and continuity with data and customer experience. but they've also found ways to experiment with new technologies around the edge and to treat those as kind of two different categories of technology. Not every tech tool should be evaluated or treated the same way.
Good point. No, that's awesome. So, I mean, I know we have been here for a very long time, and we've taken up so much of your time, Scott.
So much rich content. I'm telling you,
so much.
we always have these intentions of like a 30-minute, like, let's keep it tight. And then we get into things are interesting.
Sorry, I ramble.
No, you don't. That's the thing, though. You didn't ramble. I mean, well, I'll leave the digs out of the conversation, but no, you're not rambling. I guess we probably have time for, one last question.
I love the last question if you'll take that one for him, unless there was one that you were just dying to know.
Yeah, so I think, the very last question, and I kind of like, I like to use this as a as kind of a wrap up and kind of a, okay, here's kind of things we talked about today. I listened to a lot of interesting concepts, but so what? And so if there's maybe, one or two key takeaways or a piece of advice maybe that you either want, your colleagues or peers in that are CEOs, that are in marketing ops, that are in marketing tech, in marketing and sales, if there's one or two takeaways you'd like for them to get from this conversation, or just relative to the whole tech landscape today, what might those one or two things be?
Wow. All right. The pressure. I think two related thoughts there. One is design for change, because that's really the only constant that we know of, is accelerating change. And by design for change, this is partly from a tech level of designing systems so that they're open and extensible. But it's also more from an organizational level. There's a guy who's been in web analytics for years, Avinash Kaushik, who maybe a decade ago, had this 90-10 rule, where he said you should invest 10% in your tools and 90% in your people. And I gotta say, I see that again and again across the entire marketing and sales tech landscape. Is the tools are fantastic. They're amazing. They've, for the most part, far outstripped our abilities as organizations and human beings to even take full advantage of what they make possible, And so my advice to anyone who's, thinking about, all right, how do we get the most value out of marketing and sales tech, is really turn the emphasis on how do we bring more of this power to the people who are going to leverage it. Part of it's training, part of it's giving people more opportunity to experiment, part of it's changing the way we manage, taking advantage of this stuff, moving to ever more agile approaches. So yeah, if you're designing for change and you're investing in people for adapting to that change, I think that's the best thing you can do.
It's great advice, and I appreciate you taking a crack at a tough question there at the end. Well, Scott, like I said at the beginning, it was absolutely great and a pleasure to have you on. I really appreciate you carving out some time to chat with myself and with Lindsay this morning. If people want to follow you, stay in touch with you, what is the best way for them to do that? On LinkedIn, Twitter, something else, your blog?
Sure, yeah. So again, Chief Martech without the H on the end, .com at my blog. And that's also at Chief Martech on Twitter. And yeah, feel free to reach out. We'd love to talk to you.
Great.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. And, we hope to maybe have you back again someday. In 5 years, we'll see if, see what's going on there. So,
sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, folks, as always, if you enjoyed this podcast, please hop on over into iTunes and give us a review. And you know what, folks? Until next time, keep the conversation going.
Yeah, keep talking.
You've been listening to the Yin and Yang Show, a marketing and sales conversation with Lindsay Kelly and Brian Signorelli. Join us online at yinandyang.fm.